There's something in the news today about Texas statewide school board deciding what personalities should be included in Texas textbooks on U.S. history and which ones should not be. And it was decided that Helen Keller should not be included, that there should be more emphasis on military heroes and first responders. I think, now I could be dead wrong, that I think that I would like to teach U.S. history for just one semester. That's probably the maximum length of time that I'd be allowed to do it. And what I would want to do is the very first day I'd tell every kid to take his textbook home, pick any chapter, and then come back tomorrow and tell us what they found interesting in that chapter. And I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts that the next morning nobody found anything interesting. And I'd like to explain that the reason why they did not find anything interesting is that committees of powerful adults, such as that Texas School Board Committee, have worked long hours to take out of history books everything that could be the least bit controversial. So, for example, that Thomas Jefferson, when he went to France to be our ambassador, took along with him a 14-year-old enslaved girl with whom he later had 6 children. One wants to wonder, when did that poking begin? There was a 4-year period in there in which we would call it rape. Well, in hell, if it wouldn't matter what age the person was, if they are enslaved and told that they are property and told that if they try to run away they'll be brought back forcibly and possibly punished, then any sex with that person at any age is rape. Okay. Now, we can't have stuff like that in our U.S. history books. And why not? Well, I've been trying to think of, so what is history? I think history is an effort by a people to declare who they are and who they are not. So the Romans would tell the story of Romulus and Remus, and they kept that myth alive for 1,000 years. And in the Republic that lasted 500 years before the Roman Empire got started, in the Republic, Romans were allergic to kings or anybody that put on airs of being a king, and that is why a group of men got together and assassinated Julius Caesar, is that he was really starting to look like he wanted to be king. And it was Julius Caesar and his son Augustus that ended the Republic and started the empire. Well, so you could say that the Roman definition of who we are is that we divide power. To avoid the concentration of power in a single person, the government was always given to 2 men at the same time. They were co-consuls. All right. Now, and then they divided the power even further. There were tribunes of the people who could veto things. And I think maybe the word sacrosanct comes from that these tribunes were not to be touched, and that anybody who messed with a tribune faced capital punishment. You don't mess with these tribunes of the people. Okay, so what is it? Who are we as Romans, and what is the history we would tell as Romans? We divide power. All right, so Americans, well, we don't really want our kids to know about Jefferson poking his slaves, and we don't want to know about George Washington being a land speculator, and that the revolution might have profited him financially because of all this land that he had grabbed that maybe the Brits would not have honored. And you know, the list just goes on that of stuff that we probably don't want our kids to know about history. So for example, it's very important to the American identity that we honor the service, honor the sacrifice of our soldiers and how they have kept us free. Well, I'm pretty sure there's been only one war that kept us free. And that was the Second World War, and there were a lot of powerful people such as Charles Lindbergh, first guy to fly across the Atlantic, and Joseph Kennedy, the father of the Kennedy brothers, who did not want to get us into that war, thought that Hitler was doing some good work and should be left alone and we should stay out of European fights. So we really kind of had, well, we were drug into it by Japan attacking us, and then Hitler stupidly declaring war on us. If he had not declared a war on us, we may not have got into the European theater of the Second World War. And as for the Japanese side of the war, there's pretty good evidence that Teddy Roosevelt misled the Japanese by suggesting that they were a superior race of people to the Koreans and the Chinese, and that the Japanese should be given the authority to govern China and Korea. So, you know, they're going along happily, taking over Asia and running things, and then FDR changes, you know, wait a minute, no, slow down here. So we may have brought on that war ourselves. Then, you know, we got to honor the sacrifice and service of our Vietnam War veterans. Well, do we really want it put in our history books that we armed Ho Chi Minh, the guy who later was the big enemy in Vietnam? We armed him to help us fight against the Japanese, and he did. He helped us fight. So then when the war was over, he's figuring he ought to have his country. No, we got to give his country back to the French. And so we put guns back in the hands of the Japanese soldiers to help us hold the Vietnamese in place until the French could come in with their own soldiers and take control back of Vietnam. Do we want to put all that in our history books and leave our little high schoolers confused about what is America and, you know, what is the sacrifice that we honor? I mean, you know, if you look at your civil liberties, your freedoms, your rights as an American, there are 2 or 3 lawyers who've done a hell of a lot more for you than the entire armed services in that domain. Okay, so the question goes back to, what do we want Jane and Johnny to know about U.S. history? And what is the point of history? It does appear to be an exclusionary process of, no, you know, we don't want to be confused by fake news. We don't want to be confused by too many facts. We've got to sugarcoat and filter history to give us a nice, tight definition of what it means to be an American. Are high school students ready to take a look at that they are being programmed in that manner? Are any of us ready to take a look at how we've been and are being programmed to see things? There's this lovely blonde on Fox News that was just going on with a whole lot of falsehoods, goddamn lies. And, you know, a lot of us would rather sit and listen to a beautiful blonde tell us lies than some smart-ass liberal from New York City tell us what the actual economic truths are or what the actual immigration statistics are. We don't want to know all that crap. We want to be a nice, solid opinion about what does it mean to be an American? So I would really enjoy the chance to get with some high school students and talk about, should we program ourselves to have a nice, tight identity that is inclusive of what we want to include and excludes what we don't want to include. And if we don't live that way, if we just try to let in all of these facts that are so confusing and so upsetting, well then who would we be? What is the nature of being an American? It might have to boil down to what the Romans had, which is that what it is to be an American is to honor that power is to be divided, that power has to be checked, has to be balanced, and that process is much more important than powerful people. You can't imagine how people hate process. Donald Trump hates process. More than once he has declared, I'm the president, God damn it, I just want to do it my way. Or, you know what, you're the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States, just do it. He doesn't give a damn about process. But, you know, imagine what it takes to educate a bunch of people to appreciate that who they are is a process, is an honoring of checks and balances. Is that even possible? I mean, how do you get people to rah and unify to go against an enemy? It's just been a slice of heaven talking to you this morning. Bye.